Hello, welcome to the Draft Talk podcast brought to you by 99 Yards, and welcome to the 2023 draft season, everyone. I'm Owain, that is Stu, and it is official. We are here. We have finally made it. It is now draft season, and we will be getting you draft ready with our comprehensive coverage of the 2023 NFL draft. We will now be with you every week, sometimes twice a week, between now and when Roger Goodell opens up the 2023 NFL draft in Kansas City on April the 27th. If you haven't been here before, maybe you're listening for the first time, we are now available to watch over on YouTube. We would really appreciate if you could head over there, watch the video, subscribe to the channel. It would be really appreciated as we try and grow. But Stu, how quickly this comes around, how excited are you for what's to come?
Very excited. This is a time of year when lots of people are winding down. They think the NFL regular season has finished. This is just when we're starting to ramp up, get really excited about the draft prospects. And in 3 short months' time, we'll be sitting all together having a beer, enjoying the draft coming in. But lots of work to be done before then. And tonight we've got the A squad, myself and yourself. I hope Brian's enjoying his honeymoon if he's checking in, and MJ will see you back next week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, with it being draft season, we thought now would be the best time to talk about some of the first round locks, which we have. Looking at those players that both myself and Stu think are dead certs to go in the first round. Say, maybe you haven't been an avid college football watcher, maybe your team has struggled, maybe they're placed in the top 10 of the draft and you need to know some names of who your team could potentially draft. This right now will be the pod for you. How many names have you got, Stu, as first round locks?
I have gone smacked in the middle of the draft. I've got 16. As we know,
Not in
there's
the middle,
30.
it's only 31 picks. So you have more.
I've more. Yeah, that's right. Because my team has decided they're going to forfeit it for various reasons. So I'm slightly over half. I've got 16 locks.
16.
Yeah, and there's one that I'm a bit. So I might be under that half, but I think I've got a nice number at 16 here, which feels about right at this stage.
We'll see how we go. I have 18, which is a fair few too many for my liking, but we'll see how we get on as we head through some names. But yeah, certainly that you'll hear, most about the top names which we'll have here, and that'd be the best place for you to kick off your draft knowledge. But first, let's just touch on the current draft order, which now we've got the first 18 picks locked in. The Chicago Bears are currently placed number 1 overall, with the Texans playing themselves completely out of the first round, the first pick into second, in the final seconds of their game against the Colts in the last game of the season. What are your current thoughts on the order, Stu?
Yeah, it was been Houston Texans for months, and then decides at the end of the year that Lovie Smith decided he knew he was leaving the Texans, I think, and left them his old team a parting gift with that number 1 overall pick. I think there's some exciting prospects and things happening in this draft. And I don't want to spoil too much about this draft. I'm not sure 100% that this is the strongest draft in the world.
Yeah.
But I think it might be one of the most exciting drafts. Looking at the top end of the door, nobody really knows what any team is definitely nailed on to do. There's going to be a lot of moving around, a lot of changing of opinions. We've got teams who've done really well this year who are actually picking in the top 10 via previous trades. You look at the Detroit Lions, who came on really strong at the end of last year. They're picking 6. You've got the Philadelphia Eagles, the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're picking at number 10. And there's teams, I don't think that certainly this 18 is going to be chalk, and this is the order that the teams are actually going to pick in. I think between now and the first night, we're going to see quite a lot of movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, my opinion is exactly the same, that this could be the most exciting current draft order that we've seen in some time. And definitely since we've started doing the draft coverage, I think that this is the teams that are the best placed here. You're going to see a bunch of different opinions, which is always great. And so definitely since we started doing the coverage, that this is the one definitely that I'm the most excited about, just because so much could happen. I think one of the things that makes it so exciting is it's quite clear there's going to be a quarterback auction in the top 10. There's too many teams littered about and throughout the draft who are QB needy that it just feels inevitable that at this point that there's going to be an absolute sell-off of quarterbacks definitely in the top 10. You think the Texans, Colts, Panthers, Falcons, Raiders, Jets, Commanders, how far back do you want to go? They're just some of the teams who have uncertainty at the position. And some of those will 100% have to leave the draft with a rookie quarterback. You think of the Colts, they will have to leave the draft with a rookie quarterback. You think the Texans as well. I would expect them to leave with a rookie quarterback rather than enter the market, just because of how their windows going to work. And for me, I'd say it all starts with that number one pick, doesn't it? You've written an excellent article, Stu, on what the Chicago Bears should do with that number one pick, and say, do they auction it off? They should definitely be fielding calls, because you think those top four picks, you've got Bears at 1, Texans at 2, Cardinals at 3, Colts at 4. That means that we are primed for 2 big blockbuster trades, both at 1 and I would say at 3 as well. 1 being the obvious, say the Bears, they seem to have their quarterback. They should be fielding calls, starting off with a minimum of 3 first-round picks. I would have thought, similar to the Trey Lance trade, that there's just going to be so many QB needy teams and so many calls that's what the starting price should be. But then you have the Cardinals at 3. And who are they ahead of at 4? As I just said, there is the Indianapolis Colts, right? And Chris Ballard, the GM, has just come out and said that they will be aggressive in their search for their next quarterback. They've tried out the veteran market. It simply, for me, has to be a rookie QB coming out of it, and I could see them moving up, and that will then set off everything. And say, it depends on who you like in this draft, but I bet at least of those 4 picks, are we maybe looking at 3, possibly 4 quarterbacks going that early because of the sale off, and say because of that Trey Lance style trade which we've seen. I could see 3 first rounders, and someone's going to be, say, in a really exciting position come the end of this.
Yeah, I think the Cardinals have actually locked themselves into quite a nice position, being at number 3 as well there. They are really set at their quarterback, although Kyler Murray is going to be missing a chunk through injury. They also have time made as well. They're going to have a new GM, a new head coach. They can do whatever they want from that point. But I think the draft really does go through Chicago. They've got the number 1 pick. They've also got the most money to spend in free agency to do whatever they like as well. And I think that's important. These teams, before the draft comes up, they're going to spend, and then that might reassess their needs and what they want. And so Chicago really holds all the aces moving forward.
Yeah, and they could basically have it whatever hole they want. Because if they stick and pick, then you would think that has to be a quarterback, and they'll move on from Justin Fields, because they can't stick and pick one of the top names there, because they can get one if they move back. You think if the Raiders, the Panthers, the Colts, they all have to be aggressive and going after their quarterback, and it's one of those 2 spots. And if you want the top quarterback, it is going to have to be at 1, and I can't see them getting anything less than 3 first rounders at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know we're not going too much into we are really, but that spot at 4 almost looks more appealing to trade with than 2.
Yeah.
If the Texans want to flip picks, you're not going to give up a huge haul to flip. But if you're the Colts, you can be really desperate. You can be boxed out of that top 3. You're going to do whatever it takes. And if they do that, they're going to start that quarterback run, and the Bears could fall into the player that they wanted all along at 1 anyway.
There's going to be some talk about whether the Texans try and flip up to 1. I can't see them doing that personally, because if they want a quarterback, there'll be one there for them anyway, and it's pointless giving up anything really to do that, unless they are really enamored with Bryce.
I think when you're such a franchise as the Texans, you've got so much needs. Do you want to burn draft capital? Don't know if I would, and particularly as well because their GM is going to be fighting a little bit for his life. He's going to want to make sensible choices.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see, we can speak for hours and hours on this, and I'm sure we will continue to do so in the run-up. If you could have a whole podcast
on and off screen. We're going to be spending months talking about this.
Plenty of text messages going back into trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. But as you can tell, it's going to be super exciting to see how this all plays out, because as we just saw there, it will definitely be chaos. Who are those teams be interested in? Probably one of the players which we're going to speak about today on this podcast. So a lot of first round locks coming your way. Let's kick off with the players we think are locked in to the first round of the 2023 NFL draft. We'll go back and forth, giving you some names and some info. Do you want to kick us off there, Stu? Do you maybe want to start? Do you think we want to get the quarterbacks out of the way?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've kind of divvied them up by positions roughly. So, for me, I have 3 absolute locks for the first round. And we've talked about certainly one of them, which is Bryce Young, the quarterback from Alabama. If he gets out of the top 2, I'd be extremely surprised. CJ Stroud, Ohio State, and I also have, although he's not my favorite quarterback in the world, Will Levis. I can't see him being anything other than, is he going to get out the top 5 even? I don't know with the way things are going at the moment, but that's my 3 absolute locks I have, is they're going to be first round quarterbacks.
Okay, I have 4, and that probably doesn't surprise you.
It doesn't, and I was tempted, but I can see a world in which the guy who you're probably going to say is 4 could go top 5.
Yep.
In a world in which the process all doesn't work for him and he ends up falling out of that first round. I think the variance is so massive.
Yeah, that player is Anthony Richardson, the Florida quarterback. I'll touch on him quickly here just because it makes sense to. That, as you said there, Stu, he could either go as high as Trey Lance in terms of comparability, or he could go as low as Malik Willis. Because there'll be some NFL teams that see him either way. That there'll be some that have him this really high-rated player like with Trey Lance, and there'll be some that have him as a third-round player like most did with Malik Willis. And say, after what we said at the top of the show, the amount of quarterback-needy teams that there are, I'm convinced that we're going to have to see 4 go, because there's just too many teams and not enough quarterbacks to go around, and that's really why I've based my decision on that. And I am a fan of Richardson anyway.
Do you think the free agency market will affect that when you've got the likes of, and this is just thrown out there, I think that he probably will go first round, but I wasn't locked on him. With the likes of Derek Carr being available, Jimmy Garoppolo being available, do some of that quarterback needy teams just come out of that market and go for someone like that, and then there's not that necessary need for Richardson?
Well, possibly, but obviously these teams are also going to have to replace them, right? The Raiders with Derek Carr, that they're going to have to replace him. Do they replace him with another veteran? Maybe, but there's talks that they're in for Tom Brady, but does that actually come off? I don't know, but does a team want to go with Jacoby Brissett, or do they want to take a gamble and go with Anthony Richardson? And if you do go with Anthony Richardson, it's a risky play. That you absolutely, but we just touched on it briefly just in a sentence before, but this isn't the best top end blue chip elite prospect draft we've ever seen. And in which case some GMs and some coaches might be able to justify their decision a little bit more. So say if you're the Panthers sat there at 9, you've got the choice of either say Richardson or someone from the next tier of guys, and you can maybe justify that decision a little bit more.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, as I say, when in drafts, if you're taking a risky quarterback and you're passing up, like say a couple of years ago, you're passing up on Micah Parsons at 11, you're not doing that this year. So yeah, I could see that. I could see that side of the coin as well.
Yeah, and that's beat around it. The Anthony Richardson for me has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this class in terms of what he will be able to do if he reached his full potential of talent. He's a do-it-all quarterback, dual threat. He just needs a lot of development. And to me, he does compare a little bit. I do compare him to Will Levis, who I'm sure we'll touch on slightly there, because we both have him as a first round lock. That they're very similar prospects to me. That what they are, they need a lot of development. They both have pretty poor decision, lack of accuracy. But people who are listening to this will have heard of Will Levis and heard that there's potential if he can go into the top 5 prospect. Well, Richardson has everything that Levis does to me. Is more athletic and is 3 years younger. So if we're going to talk about Levis as this top tier quarterback, then Richardson kind of has to enter the conversation as well.
Yeah, and I think when I'm talking about first round locks, it's not necessarily who I would pick.
Yeah,
it's who I think that teams are going to pick, and there's a lot of chatter that some people have said if the Texans were at 1, they might have taken Levis at 1.
Exactly.
So yeah, Richardson, I could buy that one.
What's your opinions on Levis then? Let's just touch on him.
I can see the good in Will Levis. And he has the athleticism, he's got the arm strength, he's got all that physical attributes, he's got that stature, he's just a big, imposing guy, and he can impose his will on people if he really wanted to. If he has the right coaching and the right setup, you've seen. I don't want to make the comparisons because it's daft really, but you say everyone's got to do that Josh Allen thing, aren't they? Josh Allen still is an anomaly. And I think people chase that anomaly, and anomalies are anomalies for a reason. When you look at how poor his accuracy was coming out of college and all the decision-making stuff, Josh Allen shouldn't be as good as he is. But he's worked at it really hard. The Bills have put a lot behind him and a lot of faith in him. And Will Levis could do that, but also Will Levis is the one who could, in 2 years' time, was saying that he's got a GM fired.
Yeah, absolutely. Potentially he's going to be the most polarizing quarterback prospect, because people are going to either have him as 1, a bit like Marmite. They're going to love him, they'll have him as 1, or they'll have him down at 4 or 5. Because he's truly that kind of Marmite prospect. No doubt in his talent, but accuracy and decision making is well off where it needs to be at this moment in time if he's going to make it as an NFL player. You're going to have to bet on your coaching team if you draft Will Levis. When there'll be plenty of teams that are willing to do that, but with a turnover lower down in the draft, it may take a big punt to be able to do it. Another player, I guess, that we'll both have as first round locks that we should touch on is CJ Stroud, Ohio State quarterback. I think probably I speak for both of us at this moment in time where he'd probably be quarterback 2 for most. The question marks on him has always been how he performs outside of structure, and is he the most mobile, and what can he do when the play breaks down? Didn't really answer many of those questions during the season. I once said we saw a great deal of development from last year to this year, but he turned it on in the college football playoff semi-final against Georgia, where he absolutely lit them up, and people and teams and scouts will see that and think, well, we can work with that. And I think that will have done wonders for what his draft stock will do, where people were maybe talking about him slipping out the top 10. That isn't going to happen anymore.
Yeah, he came good at the right time, didn't he? Because there is always recency bias. We saw it with the likes of Sam Darnold when he had a really good bowl game. That people were like, oh, he's amazing. And there will be that recency bias with CJ Stroud, no doubt about it, given the performance he put on against a very good Georgia defense. And you've seen how they've performed against other teams. You saw it in the final. They just completely shut down TCU and just gave them no hope in hell. And Ohio State were just a whisker away from beating them. And a lot of that was down to CJ Stroud. Yes, we'll talk about there's players who are not even going to be in this draft who we're going to have to talk about, and we'll try and forget him because he was so good. We'll leave that for the 2024. But CJ Stroud really showed what he can do. That was a really chips or down game. You've got to perform or you're going home. And that pressure on him against that historically good Georgia team, going for a second national championship, CJ Stroud was phenomenal in that game. And I think teams will look at that and say, do you know what? This guy does have a bit more about him. He maybe hasn't been asked to play out of structure so much, being in an Ohio State team that are good. He moved around a lot more than we've seen him do. Maybe partially because he had to, because of the pressure was coming from that Georgia defense. But yeah, CJ Stroud, again, I was tied between him and Bryce Young at the start of the summertime. And I'm maybe edging back towards being a bit closer again than they were maybe midway through the season.
Yeah, he's definitely edged it there. And I think if you're a team who has some pieces on the offensive line, has some weapons, then I don't think you should doubt drafting CJ Stroud, because, it is a bit of a crapshoot, especially at quarterback. And, he's likely as safe as they come at the quarterback. Not that any of them are particularly safe. Bryce Young was the last one. I'm pretty sure everyone will have heard of him already. The clear favourite to go number 1 overall. Quite clearly the best quarterback prospect in this draft. Size concerns, complete outlier. Anything to add there?
It's going to be size, isn't it?
Yeah.
If Bryce Young was built like Will Levis, this guy would be. There wouldn't even be any questions. He'd be number one, and it wouldn't even be close. He'd be miles ahead. But he's really small. Is he going to even measure in at 5'10"? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think he's going to even hit that 5'10" mark. And he's that 180 pounds soaking wet type kind of guy. He's not big. Is he durable enough is going to be the question. He is well protected at Alabama. They're always bigger. They're always stronger. If he goes to a team, he's going to have to be well looked after. If he goes to a team that's got a porous offensive line, he could get smashed. But he's very, very clever. He's very high IQ guy. I think he's got enough about him that he could, he's aware enough of pressure. He senses it. He maneuvers around the pocket as well. For a guy who's a smaller guy, he's not an electric running quarterback by any stretch of imagination, but he moves well enough, and his movement in the pocket is really very good. And I think that's what's going to stand him in good stead.
Yeah, absolutely. You can straight up lock him in now. He will be the person that you hear the most conversation about, especially with that number one pick. What position should we move to? I presume we both have a running back as well.
I do.
Yep.
I've got one.
I have one as well.
Yeah. So again, this is probably the most surefire lock running back that you're going to hear us talk about being a first rounder, because they do happen, but they don't happen so often. But I'm assuming you've got Bijan Robinson.
Who? Never heard of him. Yeah,
never heard of him. Of course, you've got Bijan. You almost made me stop and pause there, but not really. Bijan, if anyone has watched college football, you'll have seen Bijan in some of the highlight reels. He's spectacular. He's a monster. He's big. He's fast. He's athletic. He catches the ball well. He breaks tackles. He's got good straight line speed. I honestly think at a stretch, if your team is down a slot wide receiver, you could chuck Bijan Robinson in there for half a game. He's that good at route running. He's probably the best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon.
Yeah, I was going to say that's how good this guy is, right? So top 10 picks recently: Saquon Barkley, Fournette, McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott. You can put him in that conversation of that tier of prospects.
Easily.
It's not very often you see a running back getting locked in the first round, but he really is that good, and he will be able to make that instant impact definitely onto a team. He'll maybe be better than some of those names we just mentioned. That he will be the best quarterback that I've certainly evaluated and graded doing this. 100% going in the first round, because apart from positional value, there aren't too many players that you're taking ahead of him this year.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's going to be against him being taken in that, he could be a mid-round. He could even be in the 20s. It's purely positional. It's nothing to do with Bijan Robinson's talent. It's going to be, and I think he's fortunate in this draft as well. He's probably going to go to a team who are quite good, because all these teams are going to scramble for quarterbacks and trenches and some good team down in that, maybe a playoff team, fringe playoff team. He's going to be sitting there. You think, I've got quite a good roster around him. I can take not a gamble. I can take a running back and use him as an offensive weapon. So look out if you're a fantasy football fan. Bijan Robinson's a name for next year as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Dynasty leagues have already drafted him in the first round somewhere. Not that I know anything about fantasy. I know Dynasty is a thing, and I know they like Bijan Robinson. Wide receiver, what we got there?
I also have one.
I agree.
Are we going to agree on the same player, however? Because this is too nice. It's for me and you. This is not. I have Quentin Johnson from TCU.
Absolutely.
I know there's a guy you like a lot.
Yeah.
But I think Quentin Johnson is the guy who seems to be getting a lot of the buzz, and that teams are probably going to. Is he going to be the first receiver off the board? Probably. I don't know, but he's a guy I think is definitely going to go in round one. He's been, a lot of you, if you've watched college football, have seen the TCU Horned Frogs. I mean, they got to the college playoff championship game. Not all of it was down to Quentin Johnson by any stretch of imagination, but he was a big part of that offense. Big outside wide receiver, big frame, big catch radius. He's one of those guys who's going to win you jump balls if you're in a sticky situation. Very productive, and I think teams are going to like him as that outside receiving threat.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a big receiver, but he's more than that. When you say big receiver, that normally has a connotation to it, isn't it? That he's going to be,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
you're going to throw
and I don't mean that
50-50
as
balls and he's going to come
I
down
don't
with
mean a
them.
slight at them, a slight on
Absolutely
him by
not.
any stretch of imagination.
He's much more than that. No, I'm just meaning in terms of like
Yeah,
that. If someone said, "Oh, he's a big receiver," I would automatically think, "Well, they're just chucking him up
jump
the
ball,
ball
yeah.
and letting him make play." He's much more than that because he definitely has speed. What he'll do at the combine, I'm not sure, but he will play quicker than he'll run. I would have thought, and just as a safety blanket, he's going to be Taj. He's definitely the only one that I'm knocking into the first round at the moment.
He's one of these kind of guys that, and I don't always advocate it. He's one of the guys I could think, do you know what? Just skip the combine.
Yeah.
What's it gonna? There's guys going to run faster than him, no doubt. There's going to be faster receivers because that's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
Does he have anything to prove athletically by a 10? Not really.
No.
Medical checks going along, but he's one of these guys. Like, are you going to benefit massively from testing at the combine? Don't know, but he's the guy I'd have penciled in somewhere in that 10 to 15 range, I think.
Yeah.
Depending who wants him.
And seeing what you said there with TCU, I certainly wouldn't say that he carried that team, but you saw in the championship game when Georgia shut him down, he only got 3 yards, I believe, that the TCU offense just couldn't function. I think that he would be a lovely complement at the wide receiver position for, if you've already got a bit of a room. I think of Jacksonville where they've already got some decent receivers, and just adding that size and that stature and just that presence would be a really nice piece for a receiver room that maybe even a team like Green Bay, they won't do it, but a team that has some receivers that you can add him into would fit lovely, I think.
I think that's a really good point. I like that kind of pick and mix of wide receivers. You've got having a room. I like if you've got you've got a straight line speed guy. You've got the guy who can work across the middle and the slot guy. You've got the crafty route runner. I'm not saying he's just a big outside threat, but he adds that dynamic that maybe some of these other guys don't. And when you've got that, it causes defensive coordinators fits trying to work out who we're going to try and shut down. Well, you shut down him. Okay, the guy in the middle is just going to take everything. And I think Jacksonville, that would be a really nice fit for him.
The one that I was toying about with is Jordan Addison from USC, who I am a really big fan of. Had him as wide receiver 1. I haven't redone rankings, but definitely had him as that in the summer. I do think he will go in the first round, but we're talking locks here, right? These are players that we think are 100% going to happen, doesn't matter what happens between now and the draft. And I don't really think there's any question marks over Jordan Addison, but I'm just not there on 100% lock. A bit like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is a name that people have heard, Ohio State receiver, hasn't played much this season, has the talent to go in the first round, but at this moment in time, I'd maybe be siding that he didn't.
Yeah, I had a kind of draft list of probables, but I'm not 100% sure. And I think Jordan Addison, instead of I think he was my number 1 wide receiver in the summer as well. Instead of kind of stretching away at that, he's kind of come back towards a pack maybe a little bit for me, and that's where the kind of ambiguities kind of sit.
Yeah, I thought a lot of people maybe had him up there. You kind of project as well when you do these rankings in the summer, right? And you see that he won the Biletnikoff Award for the best receiver in football last year. He then transfers to USC to go and play under Lincoln Riley with Caleb Williams at quarterback, who I don't want to talk about 2024 yet, but is unbelievable. Who knows what he can be as a prospect? You see that and you think he's in for a big year, and almost doesn't matter what his skill set is, that you just can't ignore the production. The production maybe hasn't. They've spread it around a bit. The running game's been better than we thought it has, and he's been injured a little bit. I don't know what his injury status is like at the moment, but he can stretch the field. He has some serious speed and he has some serious separation skills where he is just open constantly. So I think if he is healthy, he goes, but I'm not locking it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. That's kind of where I was with him as well. I think he probably will, but I'm not going to not going to bank the house on it like some of these other guys.
We'll maybe lock him in a couple of months' time. We'll see how it goes. I presume we have a tight end as well. We keep moving. I'm sure we're pretty aligned on a lot of these.
We're pretty chalk so far. Yeah. I have one tight end, which I'm probably sure that you do have.
Yeah.
There is another one who I think might go first round. He's in that probable list as well. But this again, coming back to locks, I'm assuming this is someone who will be from the Fighting Irish.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about him?
He just has it all, doesn't he? Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame, absolutely has it all. It's not very often that we, in modern tight ends, and especially coming out into the draft, that they can block and catch. That normally they fall into one or two camps. You think about Kyle Pitts, you think about all these top tight ends coming out. They fall normally into the pass catching category. Michael Mayer can do both. He is a great pass catcher. His route running is superb. He isn't the most athletic. Don't expect him to blow anyone away on any athletic testing, but he is a superb route runner. He gets open. He will come down with the ball, but he can also block in line. And I think it's the mixture of those two, which is really important to his game, I guess, and what his draft stock will be. That he will go in the first round. There's absolutely no doubt about it, because he's that caliber player and that highly thought of.
Yeah, and he for me falls very much on the end of the spectrum of football player as opposed to athlete. Yeah, you're right. When he has the ball in his hands, he's not going to absolutely blaze away from anybody. He's not going to have the most fluid movement skills, but he's a damn good football player. He is happy to do anything, I think, that a team asks of him. You see him line up as a traditional inline tight end. You've seen him play out the backfield. He will line up out wide. He can just, I can imagine, without knowing too much about the guy, I can imagine he's just a coach's dream. He's just this is what we're going to want you to do this game, Michael. Just go and do it. And he does with aplomb. And I can't imagine he's probably just an absolute dream to work with. And there's going to be a report tomorrow coming out saying that Michael Mayer is a total pain in the ass. You know, you've said that. But I think he would just be one of these players. You're just going to get him in your team. He's going to play in the NFL for 10 plus years and just be there every week, playing at the top of his game. I don't really have much more to say about him than he's just good.
Yeah, he's been a pro playing at the collegiate level for the last couple of seasons. And there's absolutely no doubt most people have already heard of him. That you know, for a tight end to lead Notre Dame in passing yards in terms of catches is, you know, a fantastic feat. And I don't know, is he lead them or second all time in some way, you know, some of the tight ends that have come out of Notre Dame? That just shows of how high a quality of prospect the Michael Mayer really is. Offensive line, your favourite, Stu? I'll hand it over.
In total, across all the offensive line, I have three.
Okay.
I have three offensive lineman locks for the first round. You sound a bit surprised.
No, but I have three as well. It's the way that you said offensive lineman, as in they're maybe not tackles.
No, they all are.
Oh, no, don't throw that out.
Yeah, they all are.
Okay.
Possibly.
Right.
I say possibly.
Yes.
I say possibly. The first guy is that possibly, and it's a guy that we had the pleasure of watching over in Dublin.
Yep.
Peter Skoronski, the tackle from Northwestern. For me, Skoronski, if you're looking at technique, ability to play the position, understanding of the position, framing blocks, movement, mirroring, everything, hands, without a doubt, he is the best offensive tackle for me on a technical standpoint. But we also know the NFL doesn't just go for technical standpoints, and the teams do love themselves project and projections. The knock on Skoronski is going to be that he's a bit on the smaller side, and it's going to be that, and the arm length in particular, that I think people are going to hang their hats on, that might see people want to project him playing on the interior. But we've seen that with guys like Rashawn Slater in the past, who have excelled, and I think Skoronski, if you're going to draft him, you're going to start him on the outside first. I think you have to, and if he excels, which I've no doubt that he can, you've got yourself your tackle. If not, knock him inside a spot, and you've got a rock solid guard as well.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone remembers the debate over Rashawn Slater when he was coming out about his arm length. Very easily comparable, right? Because Skoronski replaced him, originally recruited as a centre, moved out to left tackle to replace Rashawn Slater. Skoronski is going to have shorter arms than Rashawn Slater. He's possibly going to have the shortest arms we have seen in a long, long time. Dare I say, potentially ever in the first round. We're talking under 33 inches. 33 and a half is usually the benchmark for NFL teams, that if you fall under 33 and a half, some teams who are stuck in their ways will not even bother watching the tape because the measurables just aren't there. So we do have to bear in mind that. But he has the highest floor for me of any of these tackles. Absolutely plug and play. If you need a tackle and you need to slot them in, you've got a decent offensive line, you're ready to go, and you can't wait on any development, you can draft Peter Skoronski and plug and play, because he really, really is that good. Say some will project him as guard, but if you want, teams now just on offensive line just want to put the best 5 guys out there. So if you have the ability, then Peter Skoronski can play guard. Hey, he was recruited as a centre, so he can even play centre for you if you really, really, really needed it. So I don't think it will hurt his draft stock too much. It is something to bear in mind, though.
I think positional flexibility has become more on vogue in the last couple of years. The team I think of, I don't think they'll draft him, but if you look at Green Bay's offensive line recently, they've had like Elton Jenkins has played everywhere. Zach Tom, a guy I liked last year, he's come in and fitted in places, and that flexibility is really going to help him, because I think he could potentially play all 5 positions if you really needed him to.
Yeah. Another guy that can play a lot of positions, Paris Johnson, Ohio State tackle. Played his first season as a tackle. This season had been playing guard beforehand. So again, when we're speaking about if you want to get your best 5 guys out there, Paris Johnson can do that because he has that versatility. Right now, I think he will likely be my number 1 tackle. Say likely, there's still some time, but I think he's shown a lot of promise this season. Just does everything really well, and in what is shaping up, actually, I think a much better tackle class than we initially had previewed. I think it's much better than we maybe gave it credit for. And yes, he's still a little raw. So he's only played 1 season at tackle, but that's to be expected, But if you're going to have the facility to let a guy develop, learn on the job, then you've got a really strong tackle at the next level. Say, I think right now he's a likely top 10 pick for me, and if he's not a top 10, he'll be on the fringes. Certainly don't think he'll drop out of the top 15, because I think teams will like him that much.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to be the number 1 for me, but I think he's going to be the number 1 for the NFL.
Yeah, right.
I think he's got he's got the physical traits, he's got the size, he's got the coachability, he's got the positional flexibility. I think he's going to be the guy that they go to. I'm just really sad that my favorite offensive tackle went back to school. He was going to be number 1, and we're not talking about that. He was my A1 guy looking back on it.
No doubt. Olu Fashanu, who we have mentioned on previous podcasts.
Yeah, we have.
Decided to go back.
But yeah, and so that's the guy. We agree with that, and I think my third guy is probably going to be your third guy as well, which is probably the one that I had most debate about. And I think it's because of position. He will go reasonably early, and that Broderick Jones.
Yeah.
From Georgia. I think he's a guy who potentially is a boom or bust.
Right.
I have that kind of feeling about him, that he's either going to be way better than I think he's going to be, or he's going to be way worse and going to be one of these guys who is like a tin can at the position. I really don't know. I haven't got a good enough handle maybe on him yet. I probably haven't looked at him as much as the other prospects.
Yeah.
But a lot of the chat is a lot of teams like him, and he's going to be in the first round. I don't really have much debate about it, but he's one guy I'm just not personally just up to speed with Broderick Jones as just yet.
Yeah, so for me, he, as a Georgia Bulldogs fan, watch Georgia Bulldogs, that he is, for me, entered the top tier of this offensive tackle class. Um, and he showed a lot of promise last season. We obviously watched him in the summer. We liked him. He played something like 17 snaps last year. You could watch them all in like the space of a couple of minutes. It wasn't much anyway if it wasn't just 17. But he is an absolute mauler in the run game. He will pancake you and really doesn't care. But I also quite like that he's improved on his smoothness and he's got a bit of finesse now in the passing game. Look, he's just, we talked about 17 snaps last year. He's only played one full season, 15 games. We're talking put it all together, 15 and a half games in his entire collegiate career. He's obviously still raw. He is guilty of getting exposed at times, and simply just because of playtime, you have to put it down to. But if you want to tackle that, you've got the ability to develop, then I just think, yeah, what a great pick the Broderick Jones would be.
Yeah, and I've no doubt he's going first round. I think that's why we're talking about him. He's one of our locks. He is going to go first round. I don't think that there's anyone that's going to knock him down from that pedestal just yet.
No, and he is the third of these three guys that we've spoken about, right? And I've seen that. I think a lot of people are a little bit all over the shop. I'm glad that we're aligned on it. I saw someone before say that comparing to Daniel Falele, who
No.
went last year, and I just because I think of the size and he's
Yeah.
Broderick Jones is a really big guy, but
Yeah.
moves much better than that. So I mean, who knows how serious that was being, but he is much better than that, and I think will be really successful.
Yeah, he was a guy I was really not high on, if you remember, before Daniel Falele. He was way down in my rankings. Broderick Jones, I think, is head and shoulders above him.
Yeah.
Despite me sounding like I don't like Broderick Jones at all, that's not true. I think he's a good bit ahead of Falele, definitely.
Have you got anyone else on offense? I assume we'll move over to defense now, shall we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I don't have anyone else on offense. No. That was there was my one is an offensive guard.
Yeah.
Osiris Torrance.
Absolutely.
He's a guy, but we'll talk about him more when we come on to offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But if I name even some interior guys that you're looking at, he's probably going to be my top rated guard. So if that's something you want to look at, Osiris Torrance from Florida, is my guy I would recommend there.
Yeah, I think if you ask me now, I would say that he does go in the first round, but he's certainly not locked into the first round. It's not 100%, but I think it's probably fairly likely at the moment. He's just going to more impress. He's going to the Senior Bowl as well, which I think will be really, really big for him.
I think that'll be massive for him. He's done really well since transferring over to Florida.
Yeah. We've just spoke about Broderick Jones there, Georgia Bulldog. Should we start a defensive tackle and talk about another Georgia Bulldog?
I don't know any more Georgia players that's going 9-1. Yeah. I've got two defensive tackles.
Yeah.
And the one that's the obvious one to anybody who knows anything about college football and has any passing interest, even in the draft, Jalen Carter. He is a game wrecker, I think, is the best way to describe Jalen Carter. You remember that there was five Georgia Bulldogs in the first round on defense last year? Historic amount. Jalen Carter's better than them all. I'll say it. Yep. He's better than all those guys.
Yep.
And that's including a guy who went number 1 overall last year. I don't think it's close either. He is going to be a guy who's really coveted. I think particularly if you have your edge guy in place, but you still want more on the defense, Jalen Carter is your man. He will absolutely rip up guards and centers for fun. He'll eat them for breakfast, and he will be in the face of quarterbacks so regularly. But he's also a good run defender as well.
Yeah.
I don't think he's all just interior pass rush, which I think is probably his main strength. But he's solid enough against a run that he's not going to be exposed either by any stretch of imagination. And he's in the top 2 players in this class for me. Yeah. I haven't sorted out who is number 1 yet, but he's in that conversation.
Yeah,
he's in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the scout report. There's time for that, and if you want to go and see an in-depth report, search Jalen Carter on the website, search any of these guys on the website, you'll get the scout report. But he is one of the true blue chip elite players in this draft. How many of them is there? I'm not sure. I think you're going to be able to count them on one hand, though, and he is up there. Rarely do you see a prospect with this much hype on as a defensive tackle. It just the last person I can think of who had any hype like this was Quinnen Williams, and I would say that Jalen Carter is more than that. But he's the last person that I can think of that at that position had kind of a level of hype at all. He's a can't miss prospect. If you pick Jalen Carter, you are not going to miss, and that's exactly what you want from a first round player. Just pure elite, and say what he can do is extremely special.
Yeah, I think special is a nice way to frame it for him.
The next one, I'm sure we both have Bryan Bresee as well. He would be the other defensive tackle. Not in the same tier as Jalen Carter at all. He would be the kind of the tier down. Has lined up completely all over the defensive line. That I think has hampered some of his production. If you looked at just pure sacks and tackles, then that's going to be down compared to some. But that's because Clemson just do anything they want with their offensive linemen. Defensive linemen. We'll come on to another one in a bit, I'm sure. But that does impact what you see. But what you see on film is obviously that versatility, which most teams will cover, and just his power to speed is, I think, exceptional. He does have some stuff. You're going to have to develop him, but he does have some elite tools and traits which you're going to be able to play around with.
Yeah, I think when we say that he's not in Jalen Carter's league, no one is. So I think we need to kind of put him out as this alien type player and think that Bryan Bresee's a damn good defensive tackle. And I think once teams use him, I say correctly, I'm not a coach, I'm not telling people how to use play, but I think once he sits into that kind of 4-eye technique position, I think that's where you're going to see the best of him. He's not going to play over the nose. I don't think that's his game, and I don't think he's going to play out wide in that 5 technique either. I think somewhere in that kind of in between those two areas, I think where you're going to see the best of Bryan Bresee. And initially, he might be someone who you rotate in and out of a defensive line to use his strengths. If you've got a strong defensive line, whether they pick him or not, but somewhere like Philadelphia where they have that rotation of defensive linemen with all skill sets and shapes and sizes, he would fit in really nicely there to develop on, and taking the time to develop the things he's not good at, using him what he's really good at. But yeah, I think he's locked in. He's going to go, and I think he's going to go quite early.
Yeah, I think he'll go top 10. I think if you've already got an established defensive tackle, and I'll refer to the Falcons on this, who've got Grady Jarrett. I think if you were to pair him alongside someone like that, then that's the perfect scenario for him. And then there's plenty of teams, even that you think of the Panthers, who've got Derek Brown, that if there is an established guy that he can line up alongside in a four-man front, then I think that would be the perfect scenario for Bryan Bresee. But he has displayed his versatility, and there's going to be all sorts of roles which he can do, and say defensive coordinators will love to have him on the defensive front because it does give you a lot of options. We'll stick with the defensive lineman edges. I have 3.
We're still chalk.
Oh,
I have 3. I have 3 as well. It was going to be 4, but again, okay. This return into school has scuppered me.
Let's get the obvious ones done, shall we? Will Anderson.
Yeah, next. No, I think that's. I think people are just forgetting about Will Anderson, to be honest, because of all this chat in the draft. He is, particularly the season before last, although he was excellent last season. He's an explosive player off the edge. He's not the biggest guy you'll ever see playing that position in the world. I don't think he's going to line up as a hand in the dirt every play type kind of guy. You're going to stand him up at times as well. But he gives offensive linemen fits. So you don't know what to do with Will Anderson due to that explosiveness, speed, burst. He's got a good conversion of that speed into power as well. He gets in the backfield, and that's what you want your defensive guy to do. We talked about in the top 2 players. He's going to be in that discussion with Jalen Carter, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking over 200 pressures in his entire college career. That's just unheard of. He has been that disruptive, an absolute no-brainer, can't miss decision. for me, he's going to be up there with the type of caliber prospect at that position that we've seen from the Bosa brothers, from Myles Garrett. He is that good, and he has been that productive, and he will be able to slot in and do it right away in the NFL. I've got absolutely no questions at all. I don't throw generational around. I definitely don't at edge, just because the guys seem to come around all the time. But you're going to hear that some people throw that word around with Will Anderson, because there's not many. It's not very often that we see edges go this high because of quarterbacks. It is a valued position. I know we had Trayvon Walker go last year. We're talking Jalen Carter. We're talking Will Anderson. Both of them would have been way ahead of Trayvon Walker last year. Absolutely no doubt about it. Will Anderson has been the best player in college football for the last 2 seasons. For me, he will likely be the best player in this draft. I don't see that changing. Jalen Carter will be slightly behind him. It's a conversation to have for another day, but you're talking truly elite prospect.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. We've talked about Clemson, so I think we should probably stick with Clemson. And for me, this guy is probably one of the safest picks in the first round, and it's Myles Murphy.
Yep.
I think he's just one of these guys. You just know what you're going to get with him. I don't think he's going to wow anybody with elite anything, and that's not a knock on him. It sounds like I'm disparaging him. I'm absolutely not. He's just a very good all-round defensive end. He sets the edge very well. He defends the run well. He has moved around that line a lot. I think he would play slightly a knock out on the outside of someone like a Brian Brzee. I don't think he's a true interior guy. He can get into the backfield plenty enough. He's probably not going to be hitting these 18, 20 sacks type of things like a Nick Bosa is going to do or something like that. But I think a rock solid defender who can do a bit of everything. I think Myles Murphy is a really safe pick in this first round.
I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate this without sounding like I'm knocking the guy, but I find it very hard to put my finger on what it is if I was to write a scouting report that he does well. Like, put my finger on that one thing that I'm like,
I don't think he has
that.
I don't think he has a calling card.
He's just a good player.
Yeah. And there's plenty of room for guys like that in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone has to be an elite, speed guy or an elite power guy, or he's just I can't say that this is Myles Murphy. He is a speed rusher or he's a power guy. He's just a good footballer, and teams are going to like him. Yeah. I think he probably brings that a good attitude, a good way he goes about conducting himself. I think that I think he's just a safe bet. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah, we search out for these terms, don't we? With its power, physicality, bend, flexibility, explosiveness, dynamic. I think you can probably apply them all to Myles Murphy in some way, but I wouldn't say he was exclusively one of them. He's a really strange player to figure out in that sense, in terms of to write up, and it's difficult for us to then articulate it, but he is just good football player.
Yeah, he's just a football. Again, we've talked about it before. He's just a football player, and yeah, he's nailed on for me first round.
Who's the other guy you got then?
This is a guy I have a lot of difficulty with, but teams will love him, and you're laughing. It's going to be the same guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
From Texas Tech.
Yeah,
Tyree Wilson.
I think you can copy and paste everything I just said there about Myles Murphy over to Tyree Wilson.
I'm not as sold on him as I am with Myles Murphy, I must admit.
No, what I mean is in terms of what is it about him that makes him unique, or what makes him
the fact he's a pterodactyl.
Prospect.
The fact he's an absolute pterodactyl. He's got about 18-foot long arms. He's massive.
Yeah. He's big, he's physical, but he doesn't have that bend. He doesn't have that flexibility. But again, he's just a wrecker and a good football player.
And I don't know if he uses that size to his advantage. And I'm going to come on to that when we do talk about top fives. I've got a nice analogy about him to use there.
He's saving it.
I'm saving it. Tune in. You're going to find out what I'm going to call a Tyree Wilson. He's not an Atlas stone. All right, he's not an Atlas stone. Okay. But yeah, so I've a difficult. There's players I think are better than him at the edge position. Put it that way. And there's players I would pick above him, and I'm probably going to rank above him.
Yeah,
but teams are going to take that trait. He is enormous, and he has potential to use that if he's coached rightly. And teams are going to fall in love with him, and he's going to go a lot higher than people would think for what he's actually put on tape and what his skill sets are. You talk about Trayvon Walker, what he did last year. He's not going to be number one because there's too many good players above him for that. But I think he's going to have that type of ascent.
No, I agree. I think he'll go a lot higher than I would personally be comfortable with. He is just physical, dominant when he gets his hands on you. That's why I would say that yeah, because of the lack of blue chip players, I think that is going to force him up some boards. Do you have any linebackers? No, we'll go straight on. We don't have any linebackers. There's a couple of good linebackers, but it's just one of those positions, isn't it? It's a difficult evaluation to rank linebackers in the first round unless they're Micah Parsons.
Yeah, you must have a few players left because I'm running out. I've only got 2 more on my list.
I've got 3 more. So the difference. So I had Anthony Richardson when you didn't, which was the extra one, and I think I must have one more corner than you. Assuming that you don't have any safeties either.
I do not have any safeties.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'll just touch on all that in terms of safeties. Again, a position that's quite difficult to go with in the first round, isn't it? The closest to at the moment for me would be Brian Branch, just because he's probably more of a nickel than a safety. He'll be classified as a safety, but probably is more of a nickel. He's probably the closest to it, but isn't anywhere close to being locked, but is no more likely of all the safeties.
Yeah, and another guy probably is Christopher Smith. He's a safety that I've liked quite well as well. And I could see we saw it last year. There was a couple of safeties just kind of sneaked in the end there. You had who did you have? Dax Hill. Yeah. And who did the Vikings pick again?
Lewis
Cine. Yeah. So there's guys snuck in there. That might be kind of where you find these guys going, but I'm not going to lock them in there.
So corners. I think there's some debate to be had here. One of the stronger groups, again, I would say, I don't know if you agree with that, that this is quite a decent corner class. Who do you want to start with?
I've got 2. My first one is Joey Porter Jr.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got him too.
Yeah, he is a big, long, rangy corner, but he's also a physical guy as well. I think he has ability to flip his hips and turn and go with the quickest of receivers. He's got quite a good change in direction for his size. I think the knock on him might be ball production. But he's a guy who I think is going to be one of these corners that's sought after. We've started seeing a bit of a renaissance of bigger corners again. And I'm thinking of teams like Seattle who love the big, long corners. They would love a Joey Porter. The Patriots, I think maybe slightly different what they've had in the past, but those kind of teams, I think that he has been somebody who maybe it wasn't so high on in the summer, but he's had a really good year, and I think he's going round one quite comfortably.
Yeah, he's steady, competent, confident is exactly what you would want in a corner. You're not going to have those up and down plays. He's just going to be ultra consistent. That what you see from Joey Porter in college, I fully believe is exactly the type of Joey Porter that we will see in the NFL.
He's locked in. He doesn't seem to take plays off or lose concentration. He's very focused on what.
Yeah. So I've got 2 more. You've got 1. I'm intrigued to know who it is.
Are you going to try and work out? I'm going to let you try and work out.
See, the reason why I'm debating this is because I don't know whether you'll backtrack on what you've not said previously, but let's go with it. I think it's going to be Christian Gonzalez from Oregon.
Yes.
So
he's I'll let you talk about the other guy then.
We'll speak about Christian Gonzalez first, just because I've got his notes up here. That I think I took a bit of a punt on Christian Gonzalez in the summer. I'm quite happy about it. That I had him as one of the top corners, and it has paid off. I think he's got a chance of being the first corner off the board, and he's risen that much. Transferred to Oregon this summer, just showed how kind of athletic he's been, in this production as much as been much increased, and I think he just answered all the questions. What stopped him being up there with the top tier of corners in the summer? was the production, and was he just this guy? And no, he has answered all that. That corners like him, who are as athletic as him, don't make it out the first round.
Yeah, and surprisingly, when I watched him a bit more, he tackles really well. Yeah, and that is a big, it's not going to be the immediate thing you think of in corners, but he tackles well, and he uses his length and his ranginess to tackle as well. So yeah, he's a guy that I've not turned around on. I've become more switched on to.
Yeah, exactly.
Than the summertime.
Yeah. So the last guy I've got is Keely Ringo from Georgia. I'm intrigued to see why you didn't lock him up here, Stu. I think I understand why, but I'm intrigued to see what you say. But hasn't had the year that many expected him to have, but has just the look of a first round corner, has the size, the physicality, the speed. What we just said there about Christian Gonzalez is, corners who look like him don't make it out the first round. I think you can say the same thing about Keely Ringo, that players who are built like him and have what he has just go in the first round. He's not the most flexible. He can't really flip his hits. He can struggle tracking at times, but as I said, the reason why I am locking him in is because corners who look like Keely Ringo go highly, and I don't think that the NFL will make the mistake that they did with Tariq Woolen again. Keely Ringo isn't as athletic as Tariq Woolen, but he is that type of guy.
Yeah, and I totally get it. He was one of these other ones that I'm going to be a probable.
Yeah.
But there is other corners who I think might go in the first round, and it depends on what teams are wanting and what teams are looking for. And there's only so many slots in the first round. Does he get boxed out a little bit? And that was my concern. Because we've got those two big, tall, long, athletic guys we've spoken about. He's a third one of those.
Yeah.
And teams do sometimes like different corners. I mean, the kind of guys I'm thinking that are hovering around there are Cam Smith and Clark Phillips from Utah as well.
Yeah.
Our team's going to prefer them over Ringo, and he just gets boxed out. I don't know. That was my only hang up is that that kind of framing, rather than thinking that Ringo doesn't necessarily deserve to go first round.
Yeah, he's gone from a top 10 player to back half of the first round type player.
And I think it's that progression. You see him particularly with Gonzalez, he's on an upward trend. From year on year, you've seen that that progression from last year to this year. Okay, he's really come on in a year. Well, what another year can he do with NFL coaching? Whereas Ringo has stagnate is the wrong word, because he's still been good, but I don't think he's kind of elevated himself that way.
Yeah.
And that was my only kind of hang up. Is he going to go round one? Yeah, he probably is.
Yeah.
But I just haven't had the confidence. I haven't had the confidence to put my mortgage on it.
Yeah. I get that. And I do think there's probably a lot more teams who could be interested in a corner than maybe. There's three guys there that we've just spoken about. There's more than three teams in that first round who would be interested in a corner that we could potentially see a run on earlier on, which could open up spots, say later into the 20s, where if Keely Ringo was about that, I think he would go there. Say just because of the lack of first round talent, I think you could probably say that it is going to force a lot of guys who would possibly have been round two players, fringe players, into complete locks.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add there? Anything more to say?
It's exciting, isn't it? It's a brave man who does a mock draft at the moment. Put it that way. You have, I would say, 0% chance of being close to being right.
Yeah.
Some years, we knew about 2 years before, and Trevor Lawrence was going to be the number one pick.
Yeah.
And when you look at, years gone by, there's been about a year out. You've kind of been, whoa, this guy's probably going to... Trayvon Walker, maybe not. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But you've got a feel for what's kind of going to happen at the top end of a draft. Even at this stage, you can maybe sometimes predict that few top picks. It's utter carnage this year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Apart from the two blue chip players in Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, this really, really is up for grabs. And it is, if you're someone who is looking at mock drafts this time of year, you can throw them out the window. I would say just use them as tools to say these are players that you should be looking out for, which is exactly what we've been doing today. And our first mock drafts always come out the week after the Super Bowl. It's just how we've always worked it. When the draft order is completely finalized, and even then, you look back on previous years, they're bad.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think we tried to predict last year, and I think we got about as far as pick 4.
Yeah,
I think good luck being as good as picking the first 4 picks this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, we'll see what happens with trades as well. All the talk's going to be about trades, and we'll see how late people leave it. It could go down to when the team is on the clock, when the trade happens, which will just draft night will be unbelievable.
So we've not to drink too much before it starts.
We'll sleep it off. It's fine. Well, there we have it. Those are our first round locks. They are the top players in this year's draft that we are locking into the first round. So remember, please head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. That would be amazing. Watch the video. That would be great. If we've missed anyone, is there someone that you think you should have had locked in? Let us know. Head to YouTube, leave it in the comments, or send us a message on Twitter. We'll be glad to get to it. YouTube comments would be the best place to do it, and we'll get to you. Coming up next week, we'll be having the whole draft crew back together. Both Brian and NJ will be back with us. We'll be doing our rookie team of the year, so creating our complete NFL team of rookies, and we'll see what discourse we have there. So you won't want to miss that one. We'll see you then.